Hello and welcome back to the World Championship in Through the Ages. After the two 4-player games, I have quite a difficult position in the standings, having only scored 1 point so far, being 10 points behind Eske, who is in the lead. At least I have one game less finished than my opponents, but I definitely need to start getting some wins in, otherwise I'm in big danger of getting eliminated out of the World Championship. So yeah, and the game that we are taking a look at today will be a 3-player game against moemoe and ciufile, so let's take a look at how that one went. In this game I'm playing in the second position, and first of all we can take a look at the leaders and wonders. We have a little bit of lab synergy in H3, Marie Curie, Steve Jobs, Einstein, but no Bill Gates. We have the spaceflight, but no Manhattan Project. There's internet together with Pierre, which is very interesting. There's Marlene Dietrich, but no Hollywood, also no Chaplin and no Fleming. There's Gandhi and Churchill, who are important for the military, also the Red Cross is there. In H2 we have Suez Canal and Cook, so there is some colonization payoff. We have also James Watt and the railroad. There is no ocean liner service, no Maria. We have Newton as a strong economical leader, Bach as a theater leader, Napoleon, Catherine as some military action leaders. Also the Harvard College is a very strong economical wonder. In H1 we have the Silk Road but no universitas, Forbidden City and the St. Peter's Basilica to help with the happy faces, Himeji Castle but no Great Wall. We have one military action leader with Jan Žižka. We have Leonardo and Gutenberg for some lab and printing press synergy. We have Eleanor for and also Barbarossa for maybe some colonization strategy. Genghis Khan and also Michelangelo potentially maybe together with the St. Peter's Basilica could be interesting. ciufile starts with taking the Roman roads, which I think looks like it should be the best pick for him. And for me, I definitely have some different options here. As you can see, I end up taking the Stonehenge, but I could have also gone for Hippocrates here. I could have gone for the Colosseum and a Ridgeland, getting maybe the inferior wonder, but together with one resource, which I think in the early game definitely makes a big difference. And maybe I should go for it, maybe I should value the Colosseum a little bit more highly, but I just don't like it as much, and especially in 3-player games, where there are just very good chances to get something like Monarchy or Code of Laws early. I think the Stonehenge is very strong, and I, at the end, was willing to pick it over the Colosseum, even though it means missing out on one resource. However, I had to consider if I rather want to go for Stonehenge or maybe Hippocrates. If I go for the Stonehenge now, I think it's very likely that Hippocrates will be taken away. ciufile has no leader. And there is one very interesting leader for me that could come out of the deck, and that is Hammurabi. I think Hammurabi with Stonehenge is a very strong combination. However, especially if Hammurabi falls down to 2 civil actions, it could also be quite likely that ciufile will take him away. Then it could be that maybe either I get something like Boudica, which could also be a very fine leader, or I could then maybe end up either with Caesar or Homer. Caesar could maybe be fine, maybe I could set up a colonization game or something, and Homer is not ideal with the Stonehenge. It's the one that has a lot of steps, it already has a happy face, but I think Homer can still be a fine leader, so I think that would be a fine combination. I would have a strong wonder and a fine leader, but I have the hopes to get Hammurabi with Stonehenge, which I think is just a very strong combination. On the other hand, when I go for Hippocrates, then I could maybe either just end up with the Hanging Gardens, as I think that the Stonehenge will likely be taken away. Hippocrates and Hanging Gardens maybe not the greatest start, but there's the hopes that maybe the pyramids could be revealed, there is a more than a chance higher than 50% that the pyramids could be revealed, but there won't be that many cards revealed, I think, as maybe it will be sometimes, because moemoe will probably take the Ridgeland plus Stonehenge when I go for Hippocrates. Then there will be 5 cards revealed, so it's definitely possible that the pyramid stays in the deck, and then I either go for the Hanging Gardens or maybe skip the HA Wonder, and at the end I just like Stonehenge plus, for example, Homer more than this combination, and with this both Stonehenge and Hippocrates pick, I have hopes to maybe get either the pyramids or Hammurabi, so at the end I just went with the Stonehenge here. moemoe will indeed go for Hippocrates now, together with the Ridgeland. And as you can see, there are no pyramids revealed, but Hammurabi. But the thing is, even with Hammurabi being on 3 civil actions, he will actually be taken away by ciufile. He maybe values him quite highly. Could have gone for someone like Homer or Caesar, but maybe both of those leaders don't work too great. Maybe I would have just gone for Homer, at least letting Hammurabi stay in 3 civil actions for me. But no, I mean, if he plays some turns, then he will get the civil actions back that he has paid now. Maybe he has more civil actions at a turn when there then will be a lot of interesting H1 cards available. But I'm not sure if I would pay 3, but I don't think it's a weird play, because it's definitely not uncommon to see some strong players grabbing Hammurabi for many civil actions, and I definitely also have done that already. Now it is my turn. I will build a mine, and the question is, what leader do I want to go for? I could just go for Caesar, hope to get some nice draws, maybe create an event deck to my liking, but at the end I just rather want to go with Homer, who can be a bit clunky, especially with the 4-step wonder, but he will give me a permanent happy face. Maybe I can get 1 or 2 resources out of him, and I do think that is a very fine amount of value to get. And one of the reasons why I didn't go for Hippocrates, by the way, was also that there is no Saladin, no Nostradamus, so maybe not a great best early replacement leaders for him. I go for Homer now. With going for Homer instead of Caesar, I also let the Alchemy stay on 3 civil actions for moemoe. He has Hippocrates, and the Hanging Gardens will be discarded for him. I think it will be very important for him to find something to invest his resource into, and this early Alchemy could be a very nice thing to invest his resource into. So I also thought maybe it's a small benefit for me to let the Alchemy rather stay in 3. Maybe also it increases my chances to maybe actually see the Alchemy on my next turn potentially. I draw 2 cards, a tactic already, which is nice. There's also Jan Žižka in the game, so it maybe makes it even better to have a tactic already and opens up the possibility to go for that leader. moemoe goes for Hippocrates, builds a mine, and is willing to take the Code of Laws for 2 civil actions, which I think is a fine choice, but I also wasn't too unhappy to see it, because without an additional science source, I do think the Code of Laws is quite a bit of an investment. Truthfully, takes the Engineering Genius that now fell down to 1 civil action for him. That's a very nice card for him, especially with having the Rome Roads. He also takes the Alchemy, and I do think he has the ingredients here to really nicely upgrade his economy at the following turns, can finish the Rome Roads, can go for the Alchemy, and might have a strong economical position going out of H1. So sadly the Alchemy is taken away, but there's at least 1 nice card falling down the row for me for 1 civil action, which I definitely want to take, and that is the copy of Knights. With me having already drawn the Phalanx tactic, I definitely want to take that. But after that it was a bit of a question, what do I want to do? How can I spend my civil actions effectively? I could now build a second lab. But then I need to pick some of those cards. Theology is not really that great. I have more than enough happy faces already with Homer and Stonehenge. Urban Growth A is not that great, especially after having already built the second lab. I can, if I want to be more civil action efficient, I can build some steps of the Stonehenge. And that's also what I did at the end, because I just didn't really like it that much to pay 2 civil actions for those cards, or 1 civil action for the cards, for those 2 cards here. And so at the end I just went for a very civil action effective turn. I built 2 steps of the Stonehenge and increased my population, going very early into consumption, which is not ideal. Alternatively, I could have, for example, maybe taken the urban growth for 2 and then built a lab with it at the next turn. But with having Homer and a 4-step wonder, that will require some civil action, so I felt like it is better to just be civil action efficient and build the steps, increase my population. With building the 2 steps and with not taking any cards from the row, I also make it that maybe I can deny the Silk Road potentially from moemoe, because he has no wonder, and you know that I value an early Silk Road as a first wonder quite highly. I let it now stay on 3 civil actions for him, making it too expensive for him to grab, and then if it falls in the 1 civil action area for me, which should be almost guaranteed, I have the option to just finish the Stonehenge and then take the Silk Road. If that will be really good for me will be the question, because that will require a lot more civil actions. I still have Homer. I do think that could be a bit of a weird setup, but if there's nothing interesting on the row, maybe it could still be strong, and maybe I could then deny it from moemoe, depending on what other options will be available on the row for him to invest his resources into. I will draw 2 cards, the Pestilence and the Uncertain Borders. moemoe seeds and opens the development of crafts. He will increase his population, builds the second lab, takes the swordsman to have a military technology in hand, and also the urban growth. Truthfully goes for the masonry, develops it, finishes the Rome roads, doesn't use the engineering genius interestingly, and then instead uses the last civil action to take the drama, hoping maybe to use the engineering genius on one of the H1 wonders. Also he grabs the dramas. There's definitely some synergy in the game with Bach and Marlene. Also we saw, I think, in both of the 4-player games that Truthfully maybe values the drama quite highly. In both of the games he went for dramas, and yeah, so maybe he just likes to have this card in hand, and it is definitely a very cheap way to get some culture production in. Now it is my turn. I could potentially finish the Stonehenge and take the Silk Road away, but as I said, it is quite expensive for me, and it would mean that I don't go for the Code of Laws. It's the second copy. It's a very nice way to invest this early science that I got from the Stonehenge, and so I think it's just not really an option to go for the Silk Road here. There are two great alternatives on the row. So I will take the Code of Laws, I will develop it, I will now build a second lab to get my science production going and to get out of corruption. And for the last two civil actions, the question is, do I want to grab one of those copies of Iron or not? Because if not, I could, for example, grab Breakthrough, Cultural Heritage, maybe also the Drama, or just build one step of the Stonehenge. And those could be very effective card, would give me even more science, more easily maybe making it possible for me to get into a government form. The thing is, both of those copies of Iron will then be gone. moemoe, or no, ciufile has already a copy of Alchemy, so there's only one copy of Alchemy left, maybe leaving myself in a position where I don't really have anything to invest into to upgrade my economy, and I have some additional science that I will get from the Stonehenge still, so at the end I was willing to grab the Iron for 2 here, but it definitely was not a no-brainer. I think it could be a very valid choice to just say, let's wait for coal. There's James Watt in the game. We saw in the last 4-player game how strong James Watt can be. There's also the railroad in the game, and maybe I should just rather take some science yellows, maybe the drama to have also be prepared for Bach potentially. So I think that could be valid, but at the end I thought maybe I want to be able to actually invest my science into the Iron. On the other hand, maybe I also want to go for knights for the tactic, and who knows how easily it will be possible for me to then also go into Iron. So despite having the Stonehenge, I could still be a bit short in science, but maybe I will still find a way to invest into the Iron relatively quickly. I draw the border conflict and the scientific breakthrough with those two cards. Maybe it could potentially be considered to try a little bit of a military push and try to be the strongest. I have the tactic and those two events. moemoe will indeed now go for the Silk Road, takes the Iron, builds another step, will actually take corruption, but stays out of consumption for now. And I think he also had in the game before the Silk Road, maybe even in the other 4-player game, I definitely have seen some games from him with the Silk Road, so maybe he values that quite highly. Maybe he has seen my H1 Leaders and Wonders tier list and got influenced by that, who knows, who knows. But I do think the Silk Road is definitely quite strong for him in this position. Ciufile Seeds, the development of settlement is revealed. He will actually go for the Forbidden City now with the masonry. That works quite nicely. He has also the engineering genius though, so maybe not perfectly clean, but he maybe also wants to have a way to use that card still. And then he will increase his civil action count with going for the Forbidden City. Maybe he can also go for alchemy soon. And as you can see, I actually start seeding some of those strength events here, and the reason is that I saw that Barbarossa is available for one civil action for me. The other leaders that are on the row don't really work that nicely for me. Eleanor could be a fine transitional leader, but is also available for one civil action. More expensive. If I don't take a leader now, I don't know when the next ones will be available. So I thought it is maybe a nice idea to go for Barbarossa here. And with going for Barbarossa, I thought it could be worthwhile to start seeding those strength events, as hopefully I will have some good chances to win some of them at the end. And then there is the development of civil life revealed, which made it a bit of a challenge for me what I actually want to do with it, because I have only 2 science saved up, meaning I can't develop a technology with it. And normally you would maybe just increase your population, but with my plan of going for Barbarossa and also with having more than enough happy faces to not really need any more free population, I thought that that's not really that great if I go for increasing my population, and maybe I don't go for Barbarossa, but I felt like Barbarossa could be a very strong leader for me here. And the thing that I then at the end did with the development of civil life was to build an additional HA farm, which I think could work quite nicely. I will go for Barbarossa. Having even more food could allow myself to even go for more activations, and I have enough happy faces and can now maybe go for quite a bunch of activations of Barbarossa potentially. So I felt like that is maybe a nice idea to use the development of civil life here. Then I have 3 civil actions left. I, as said, will go for Barbarossa, and it was a bit of a tricky turn because ideally I kind of would have liked to do something like elect Barbarossa now, maybe then do already the first activation, develop the knights, but also take the monarchy so that at the next turn I can do a revolution into monarchy, get the crucial 3rd military actions for Barbarossa, have the knights already developed so that I can use Barbarossa and use his ability to already build a knight, get out of corruption, and then have a monarchy and a knight's phalanx setup going. But I can't do it because I am missing a civil action, so the question is, do I actually want to elect Barbarossa already? Do I then don't develop knights, or do I just skip the monarchy altogether? At the end I made a decision to delay electing Barbarossa for one more turn. I will take the monarchy in hand. I will actually use Homer's resource already to build a warrior. Maybe you could argue that I should wait for Barbarossa to build some units, but I have hopefully enough food and enough happy faces to just still build a lot of units, and maybe I don't need a free population really. Of course I could get punished if there's development of religion or warfare revealed, but also the religion I maybe don't really need at the moment, and there is some arena synergy with Darwin and Pierre, so maybe missing out on the religion is not too bad here, and so I just wanted to use Homer's resource. At the next turn I can elect Barbarossa, go for the knights, use Homer's resource again, and then maybe in 2 turns potentially I could do a revolution into monarchy. This plan now is going for a bit of a military push. Maybe makes in hindsight my iron pick a little bit weird, because that will now get quite delayed, and then we will have to be, you will see that it will take a little bit longer until I find the time to get into the iron. So maybe now in hindsight it would have been better to have those science yellow cards, but maybe it could still be also nice to have the iron in hand. Now I have 1 civil action left, and the question is what to do. I could already commit to either knights or the iron, but I kind of wanted to stay a little bit more flexible, and at the end I thought it is very fine to just pick the irrigation here. With Barbarossa having some more food could be quite nice, and also I have now committed to 3 farms already, meaning if I upgrade all of them I have the same production as if I have 2 selective breeding farms, so I think it's just a cheap solution to maybe fix my population income for the rest of the game, so I think the irrigation, getting that for 1 civil action, is quite strong here. I keep the phalanx tactic and the uncertain borders, draw a raid, which could maybe be interesting in case I get a little bit of an threatening amount of strength going. Moemoe this turn will just finish the Silk Road, increases his population to get out of corruption, and then takes the Engineering Genius, which has the potential to even give him 4 resources with the Silk Road bonus. Ciufile seeds and opens the development of trade routes. He this turn will go for Leonardo, elects him, finishes the Forbidden City, goes for the alchemy, and takes the irrigation. I think he has definitely a very decent economy going, as Rome Roads Forbidden City is now for science production, for resource production thanks to the Rome Roads. Now that I have already committed to the border conflict, I wanted to follow up and see the uncertain borders into the deck. The event revealed is indeed the development of religion, which is still a bit annoying for me, mainly because my opponents are getting the religion now, and it is more helpful for them, especially for Moemoe. Ciufile also doesn't really need a happy face at the moment, but for myself it's not too bad, as I might want to have my population somewhere else anyway. And now, so I will go for Barbarossa this turn. I will develop the knights, start building up some strength in preparation for those events. I could just go for a 2nd knight already, but then I think it was a little bit tricky to actually use my civil actions effectively. I could maybe just take urban growth through Galatea or something, but using those civil actions just to spend them on some cards is maybe not the ideal way. So instead I revealed a tactic. That means that I'm still not out of corruption, but it also, with having not spent 2 resources more, I have the possibility to go for 1 food upgrade already, and that food upgrade might actually be quite important, because at the next turn I can maybe go for 2 more activations of Barbarossa potentially, and if I do this now, I will be at 6 food at the next turn. Doing those 2 activations will cost me 4 food. Then I will be at the next area of the yellow bank, have 2 food left, plus 2 food will be 4 food, and then in 2 turns, when I will likely have to lose the 2 yellow tokens, I can increase my population and with that fix an uprising issue that I otherwise would have had. So I have now the potential to build more units with Barbarossa. Getting the food production generally might be nice for Barbarossa, and so I felt like that should be a nice solution for the turn. And actually I also grabbed the frugality, so that at the time when I then will increase my population, I actually maybe can use another Barbarossa activation afterwards relatively quickly, thanks to the additional food. If the uncertain borders is revealed very quickly, it could even be that I can use another Barbarossa activation immediately after using the frugality in 2 turns. So I felt like that should be a decent pick, as the other cards don't really work for me. I don't have science for cartography, and I don't want to increase my population normally. I have the raid in hand, and who knows, Ciufile doesn't have a military tech could maybe go for Theocracy, but if he doesn't, he could be vulnerable to an aggression. Also moemoe, both of them have 2 military actions, and if one of them doesn't react, I have this 1 aggression in hand to potentially punish them, which is nice. But moemoe is, first of all, you will see it. I was very happy to see that the uncertain borders are revealed immediately. And he is actually willing to pay quite a bit of a price to be safe. It's the second copy of Knights, and as we will see, he has a good Knights tactic. The medieval army can maybe still hope to get Yanszyszka, and with that I do think it makes sense to pay 3 civil actions for the Knights, especially if he doesn't have a tactic for the swordsman. Now ciufile doesn't have any knights available, and for him, as said, the only really good option, maybe apart from the warfare, is just to go for the Theocracy. At least he has an additional civil action from the Forbidden City, also the Masonry to save some civil actions, so I do think the Theocracy is maybe quite fine. He builds 2 warriors, with that it is at 3 strength and is able to defend himself. However, building the 2 warriors kinda made me think that he maybe doesn't have any defense cards in hand, because it's a little bit of a commitment. I mean, both knights are gone, maybe he also just wants to use his military actions effectively, so I do think there may be enough reasons to build those 2 warriors even if he has a card, but it could also be that he just wants to be completely safe from aggression with potentially having no cards in hand. Now it is my turn. I can't really go for the aggression, as both of my opponents prepared themselves very nicely, and no. Then this turn I will just go for Monarchy Revolution, because with my low science and also using Barbarossa, for which I don't need any civil actions, I just can't do that many nice things if I go for a normal turn. I do think getting this Monarchy going now, being at 6 civil and 3 military actions, is quite nice. I'm now again still quite low in science. It might take a while until I can get into iron, but at least I'm a little bit threatening, and actually after building a knight I went for another warrior, because at the next turn I can use the frugality. Afterwards I have 3 food left, and I can go for another warrior, putting myself at 14 strength, and hopefully enough to maybe then pull this aggression off potentially. But I also still have the option to maybe go for 3rd knight at the next turn, and then copy the medieval army tactic, which puts me at 1 strength more, thanks to the knight having 1 more strength than the warrior. The tactics would give me the same amount of strength. It would cost me some draws to copy the tactic, but if I think it is worth it, if I think it makes maybe the difference between getting an aggression off or not, I also still have this option, so I felt with building the units like this, I stay the most flexible. With not ending the age, now with doing the revolution, I make it that the age doesn't end, but it also means that Yanszyszka stays on 2, a leader that moemoe probably wants to go for, so I don't think it makes really a difference. Maybe it's even good, so that moemoe doesn't get age 2 draws already. Instead he has now to pay 2 civil actions for Yanszyszka, gets the civil action back, but has to pay the additional 1 for taking Yanszyszka, builds another knight, putting him at 9 strength, making him relatively safe, and he wants to be even more safe with going for the MHG castle here. Also already produces a very respectable amount of culture per turn with the Yanszyszka and the Silk Road. Now it's ciufile's turn. He will increase his population, goes for an additional lab, interestingly, which maybe could be a bit greedy. Maybe it could be important to have this still available for the military, and he had some very decent science production already, so it's the question if that is really worth it, but he used the urban growth for it. Maybe he needed to make space in his hand, and also needed it to get out of corruption, so maybe then it makes sense. At least he has the masonry, making that a bit cheaper. He will then go for the irrigation, so I mean at the end he has some free cards. I'm not sure if that is maybe not too greedy, but I mean he has the Forbidden City, so the next population that he will be getting is free again, and having a lot of science production can be quite strong, but he doesn't take the strategy, and at the moment leaves himself maybe a little bit vulnerable. But he will get 3 H2 draws now, could potentially still have also 3 H1 draws, but also 1 colonization cards, but also 1 H2 colonization card would now be enough to defend. The question is, do I want to try an aggression or not? And also, do I want to see the vast territory or not? And I made a decision that I want to do neither of those things. I will again increase my strength quite a bit. ciufile doesn't have enough food to increase his population. I will take the strategy away, especially if there are no riflemen. He doesn't have an easy way to get stronger, and I was hoping that then at the next turn I maybe have the option to get the raid going. And I could maybe push the vast territory, but at the moment I just don't know how I will be positioned to win it when it will be revealed. I really need to get some economy upgrades going. Maybe winning the vast territory will distract me from doing that, so I could have seeded it, but I at the end made a decision against it. This turn I will first of all use the frugality, afterwards I have 3 food left, which allows me to go for 1 more unit, and as you can see I will actually go for another knight and copy the tactic. And I did this because I thought that indeed it could maybe make a difference on making it even more likely to get an aggression off. For example, if there are riflemen on the road, ciufile could go for 1 upgrade, going up to 6 strength, and then, I mean, it's maybe likely as 1 H1 card anyway, and then he would need 2. He would need 2, and even if he has no H1 card, he could defend. If I'm only at 14 strength, he no, so yeah, if I am at 15 strength, he now also needs 1 H1 colonization card. If I am at 14 strength, he doesn't need one, but in both scenarios needs 2 H2 defense cards. But there are maybe some different ways how he could potentially set up his strength, also with events being revealed. And I just felt like it makes it a bit more likely to actually get the aggression off, and also how I'm prepared to go into tactics is, I think, just a bit nicer with being at 3 knights and 3 warriors. Maybe allows myself to get into mobile artillery, which is a very strong tactic. I have maybe a bit better preparation for the conquistadors. For the classic army, it doesn't make a big difference, so I just felt like it's a better way of having my units assembled than compared to having 2 knights and 4 warriors. And so I was actually willing to miss out on 2 draws. If it's really worth it, it's maybe a bit questionable. H2 draws, especially if you haven't drawn a tactic yet, are quite worthwhile and quite valuable, but here I was actually willing to copy to the medieval army tactic. In case there are some colonies coming that I want to win, then it also is maybe easier to send a medieval army away than a phalanx tactic. And then the question is what to do. I thought that I really want to take the strategy and also the scientific method. The strategy mainly to take it away from ciufile. Also for moemoe it could be an interesting card, but he doesn't have as much science, and maybe if he doesn't feel like denying it, it could happen that ciufile gets it, and it could really help him defending him and not being vulnerable to an aggression. And for the scientific method, I felt like that could be a very strong card for moemoe to invest into. Instead of going for something like iron first, he could just go into scientific method with the urban growth, with the Silk Road bonus, and get some really strong science production going. And also for myself, the scientific method could be very interesting. However, if I'm taking 2 technologies that are in the 2 civil actions area, there's one line of play that I definitely have to consider, and that is if it is nice to just take Darwin for 3 this turn and then take both of those cards for only 1 civil action. It's of course expensive to take Darwin for 3, but I'm saving 2 civil actions immediately, and afterwards I have Darwin going, I have no religions anyway, and when we take a look at my current amount of food, maybe it's likely that I don't really have a good chance to go for another Barbaros activation in the near future, because the next population will be unhappy, so it will take some while until I can get another population into the military without having an uprising issue. And with that, I at the end, also with could have just taken those cards, maybe the reserves or the patriotism or something, but it felt just better to maybe replace Barbarossa now. I think he has done a very nice job, has created me a lot of value, worked maybe also nicely as a very strong transitional leader, and now I can go for an early H2 leader, and afterwards take a strategy and scientific method with Darwin. Now it's moemoe's turn. He will go for the constitutional monarchy, which I think makes sense, allowing him to maybe go for that at some point. However, he invests into the iron, which is a bit of an investment. Now he can't do revolution at the next turn, but probably also needs to spend a civil action somehow, and at least he gets some production going. ciufile will take the cavalryman in hand, wants to go for a little bit of additional strength, is actually disbanding one of those warriors, builds the cavalryman, and would now need 2 H2 colonization cards to defend himself. And actually, I think I told something wrong. Now I remember it. Now the difference is 9, so now he needs 2 H2 colonization cards, but if I would be at 14, then the difference is 8, meaning he could defend with 2 H1 colonization cards and 1 H2 colonization card. So if he goes rifleman or like this, disbanding a warrior and building a cavalryman, so maybe the 1 strength could actually make a difference here. Also, he goes for playing his rich land, upgrading his 2nd farm, and reveals the Hussars tactic already to maybe keep the other cards in hand, maybe making it look like he just wants to keep all the colonization cards or something. But nonetheless, I will try an aggression, and it is successful, which I was happy to see. I think the additional resource that I get out of it very helpful for me. Will also make it a bit difficult for me to get out of corruption, but I have one way how I can avoid it. And also him losing the lab is maybe a bit bad for him. On the other hand, he has still 6 science production. I don't think it's the worst for him, and maybe he can just put a free population elsewhere now into cavalryman, for example. The easiest way for me to get out of corruption, and also the only really nice way, I could also go for the Suez Canal, but I have no colonies. I have the Vast, but I think that's too expensive. So the best way to get out of corruption for me is just to go for 2 more food upgrades, really getting a lot of food production going. And then I also wanted to take this urban growth. That would allow me to at the next turn even go for 2 scientific method upgrades, really getting some science production going. And as I am then delaying my iron by quite a bit anyway, I also made a decision to take this coal only for 1 civil action thanks to Darwin, and also potentially as a denial. It's the first copy. Ciufile maybe could just go for a coal upgrade with playing reserves if he's a bit greedy. Maybe he wants to build a cavalryman first likely, but still it could be that the second copy is late and that he now has to wait quite a bit, and I will go for scientific methods first anyway. The problem is that the next turn if I invest 6 science into scientific method, go for 2 upgrades, I'm at +6, meaning in 2 turns I will be again at 6 science until there will be some changes from the event deck, and then I am still missing 1 science to go into coal, but could go into the iron. But nonetheless, I was willing to go for the coal. It's only costing 1 civil action, could be a bit of a denial, and do think it's probably the better option later for me than going for a very late iron mine. And then with the last 2 civil actions, I took the frugality. The wave, of course, could also be a very strong card for myself. The problem is at the moment it looks like there will be some more turns where I will be the strongest, so I can't really use it in the near future. And I do think in this position it's important to take a card that I can maybe use easily to not have any hand space issues. And frugality at least allows myself to increase my population 2 times to the next turn if they are not the most exciting cards. I just have a nice way to spend my civil actions effectively, and the wave could just be stuck in my hand for a while, maybe causing some hand space issues, even though at some point the additional resources of course might be very valuable. I draw 2 cards, 2 aggressions, so let's see if Ciufile maybe is a bit greedy, but probably he will just build a second cavalryman. Moemoe this turn uses the engineering genius with the Silk Road bonus, builds the first step of Image for free, finishes it, goes up to 11 strength, makes himself even more safe, takes the breakthrough, and also Newton, interestingly. The second copy of Scientific Method is coming down the row. It's likely that he will be able to get it with Ciufile already having alchemy, and then Newton can end up being a very strong leader for him. Also, there's the second copy of coal coming down the row, but Ciufile won't go for it. Instead, he goes for the Republic, which I think makes sense. He takes the efficient upgrade, he takes Bach, he has the drama for him in hand, and also the Forbidden City, the Masonry, so I think he again managed to have a nice Bach setup, like in the game 4-player game that we saw in the last video, and then he indeed will play a reserves, build a cavalryman to not be in danger of an aggression any longer, keeps 1 H1 card in hand. If that is a colonization card, he can defend, and with that I didn't want to try an aggression. Instead I actually went with ceding the vast territory. I'm the strongest, it will take a little while until it will be revealed, maybe it's even H3 or something, and then I felt like it's a good colony, but maybe also not the most impactful, so I just wanted to move the deck forward. At the moment I'm still the strongest, but it can also change at some point, so getting the border conflict out could be quite strong, and with that I seeded that into the deck. There's no border conflict revealed, but actually the new deposits. And those 3 additional resources actually give me an interesting option that otherwise wouldn't have been possible. So also with the border conflict, that also would have allowed this option, another reason why I wanted to seed. I will go for the scientific method, I will go for 1 upgrade with the urban growth. And then at the turn before I mentioned that if I go now for a second upgrade, I am only on 6 science at the next turn. However, thanks to the 3 additional resources from the new deposits that were just revealed, I can now, after taking the Rifleman, which I think is a card that I just really want to take with having that many warriors and not knowing what tactics I will get, and then afterwards I can use the frugality, so the frugality also immediately coming in clutch, allowing myself to get a free population, and then thanks to the new deposits I can actually build an additional lab. Of course you could say, well, now you have 7 science, but you don't have enough resource to go for a coal mine at the next turn, but at least there is the hope that the border conflict could be revealed, and then that could really give me a little bit of tempo, making it that I can get my production going quicker. And it is definitely a bit of an investment, putting that many resources into actually building another H2 lab with being only in bronze production, but I have Darwin, so it also gives me an additional culture production, so overall I felt like it should be a nice move to just go for that, and there is at least now the chance that I can go for a coal upgrade at the next turn. Then I draw 3 cards, another aggression, a war, and the independence declaration. Moemoe will go for Newton this turn, makes space in his hand, goes for scientific method, uses the breakthrough with the Silk Road bonus, goes for 1 upgrade, another upgrade, and now he has enough science to even go for the Conmon peacefully already at the next turn, so I think Newton giving him a big boost. And will also get another big boost next turn when going for the Conmon, but his downside is that he is still relatively low in resource production, also still needs to fix his population income, so he needs to fix some things still, but if he does that efficiently, then he has the culture lead at the moment, has no Newton, a very strong Newton setup, so he could definitely be in a strong position for H3. Then it's Ciufile's turn, he will go for the coal, develops it, goes for an upgrade, takes the engineering genius, interestingly takes the gremlin and also the organized religion. And also builds another cavalryman to even be at 15 strength, which could be a bit problematic for me, as if the border conflict is not revealed at my next turn, and sadly there was no event pushed, making it less likely that I will now actually get the resources that I need for getting to coal at the next turn, and if I don't, and if it isn't revealed, then unless I get stronger, which would be quite a bit costly, then I sadly, maybe there's the danger that I don't win the border conflict at the end. It's an interesting choice of Ciufile to go for the Gremlin, but he has the Forbidden City to maybe help a little bit out with the unhappy face from the Gremlin, and the thing is he has Republic, the strategy is gone, he is committed to Bach, so with that he's just making it that he isn't going into H3 with being on 2 military actions, at least he will have 3. There could have been some other interesting wonders, maybe especially the Railroad, the 5 additional strength could have been quite strong as well, but he makes the decision that he rather wants to have the Gremlin here, which I think is also a fine decision. Now it is my turn, I push. I was really hoping towards getting the border conflict, and it's no border conflict, but actually an alternative way for me to get some additional resources, the wealthy territory. I had to think about it a little bit, but I was actually willing to even send an army at the end, because I thought it's very strong to just get this production going. It's a bit risky also, because I will drop down in strength and I won't rebuild any units, meaning that I'm potentially in danger of an aggression, but now, especially that I don't win it for an army, I can just send a knight away and it doesn't really give any any information about that I already used some colonization cards or something, so hopefully Ciufile, especially with having only 2 military actions, won't try an aggression, and also I have already drawn quite a bunch of H2 aggressions, making it even less likely that he has one. So I will send a knight away, putting myself at 9 resources, so I won't win the border conflict. Maybe Ciufile will win it now, but I was still happy about the outcome, as going into coal now I think gives me quite a nice boost. I go for 1 coal upgrade, and afterwards I have 4 civil actions left, and there were quite a bunch of cards that I considered, and quite a bit of different variations of which of those cards I want to take. First of all, a card that looks very important is of course a copy of Cannon that I can take for even 1 civil action, only with Darwin. Then we have a breakthrough, and especially with still having some text in hand that I need to develop, I think the breakthrough is just extremely helpful. Then there's the patriotism for some additional resources that I think could be quite nice. And there's also the architecture, with me still maybe needing to build some buildings and having some decent science production. I do think the architecture could be a very strong technology. Maybe I would just spend the 4 civil actions to take all of those 4 cards, if I would have had a hand space for it. But I don't, and then there is another interesting card that I could take, and that is the Railroad for 2 civil actions. The question is, can I still finish the Railroad quickly enough? And it's maybe a bit close, because potentially the age might already end before my next turn, and I definitely can't finish it at my next turn. I can only finish it in 2 turns. Then we have already age 3. But getting then the 3 additional resource production and the 5 strength could still be just in time, maybe for it to be worth it. And I felt like the Railroad could still be strong in the situation, and that means I can get something that hopefully will help me, which doesn't require any hand space. So I at some point came to the conclusion that I definitely rather want to go for the Railroad instead of just taking 3 of those cards and then floating 1 civil action. The question is, which 2 cards do I want to take in addition to the Railroad? And that was, again, I considered some different variations. I thought that breakthroughs may be the most important card. I just really need some additional science, and also having the potential to get into H3 government form is just quite strong. The patriotism could also be important, as a lot of resources will now go into the railroad, and while afterwards I have some good resource production, still I also maybe have some other things to do. So it could be nice, but I felt it's maybe not the most important of those cards. The cannons, of course, with not knowing what tactic I will be getting, very important. On the other hand, I will get the strength of the railroad. I don't have the most free population at the moment anyway, so maybe it could be fine to not take them. And then there's the architecture, which, especially with going for the railroad, is just a very nice card to get, as I can take it basically without any civil action cost. And if I take it and a breakthrough, then I can finish the railroad very efficiently and hopefully still have enough science for those other technologies, and then save some resources when I will go for some happy face buildings, maybe for another upgrade. So I really like the architecture. Then I consider taking architecture and cannons, but I do think I just need a breakthrough, otherwise I'm just not having enough science for all of those things. And while the architecture is nice, I came to the conclusion that the cannons are just more important, so I went for the breakthrough in the cannons. But I really would have liked to implement the architecture here. The good news is, and another reason why I didn't go for it here, is that there's another copy of architecture actually in the deck, which I can maybe take again for cheap, potentially with Darwin at the next turn. If maybe it falls down to 2 civil actions now, maybe moemoe will take it. He has a lot of science reduction with Newton. Ciufile probably won't take it, so I was hoping that I have some decent chances to get a second copy, and at the end I felt like breakthrough in the cannon should be the best pick here. I keep the war and 2 aggressions. I actually draw another war, a colonization card, and the civil unrest. I was a little bit nervous as I didn't have knowledge about rebellion, and I have now some unhappy workers. Also the team sports are now coming down the road, which is I think the last happy phase solution and would be extremely important for me with having Darwin, and also as a preparation for Pierre. moemoe will go for Conmon, takes patriotism and reserves. With the Silk Road, those yellow cards are even more valuable. He then goes for an upgrade, takes the selective breeding, takes the navigation, so he wasn't really able to do a lot on his civilization, so just had to take a bunch of cards, but most of them should be very valuable for him. Ciufile seeds, now the border conflict is revealed, but at least I'm not on the losing end, so I think it's somewhat fine after having won the wealthy territory. Ciufile wins it. I do think the additional resource helping quite a bit. It allows him to finish the Gremlin without having to play the reserves for resources. He will still play it, but it allows him then to develop the organized religion. He will also develop the drama, valuing the resource that he now gets with Leonardo more than the 2 science that he could have saved with developing it with Bach. And then he actually won't go for an upgrade to organized religion, instead will just build a drama going up to 8 culture production, and then upgrades the religion in order to go up to even 10 culture production. It's interesting that he still developed the organized religion. He takes the team sports, which looks like a denial, and it definitely could be a denial that hurts me quite a bit, and he has that many civil actions that he probably can allow himself to go for the denial. But with not having any religion left, maybe he could have just developed the team sports here and then also be better prepared for Pierre instead of having the organized religion developed. I think maybe that could be an interesting, or just not develop any of those things, but probably he wanted to get a resource from Leonardo here. And then he disbands the warrior, interestingly, probably saying I rather want to lose a card draw now than in H3, and it's likely that I will want to disband this warrior soon anyway. So an interesting heads up play here. With taking 1 card was already enough to end the age here. And I can't really use my politics phase nicely here. Aggression isn't really doing anything. I don't want to give up any draws. I could potentially seed the civil unrest, but with having not any happy phase solution, it is just a suicidal seed, so I just have to skip politics here. And I can get out of an uprising issue with increasing my population, so that's the first thing that I need to do. Then I was happy to see that I can actually still this turn get the architecture for only 1 civil action. And then I could of course invest into some stuff, but that would delay the railroad, meaning that I just build a step of the railroad. I develop the architecture already. At the next turn I can build the next 3 stages in one civil action, finishing the railroad. And then I just took the urban growth, as I might still need some additional resources. Also it allows me to finish the railroad and go for 1 more lab upgrade, really bumping my economy so that Hopefully my economy will maybe be the best one afterwards, with being at 8 resource and 9 science production, because ciufile, especially after now the Rome Road switch to culture production, is producing 12 culture per turn, can maybe go for another drama relatively easily, so he will soon overtake me, and then I need some other advantages in order to not fall too much behind and have some outs to finish before him at the end. I also take the frugality, which maybe I don't really need in the near future, but at some point I could still need it, especially also when I should win the vast territory 1 at the end. I don't have any tactic yet, so I was hoping that maybe I could draw an h3 tactic to know in which direction I need to go with my military unit development. I draw one impact of government, which at the moment isn't looking really that great, with ciufile having gone for the Kremlin and having that many civil actions. But I have another colonization card, which could be nice for the vast territory 1. Moemoe's turn will actually offer me the scientific cooperation, but as you can see he has Newton and he has a lot of cheap technologies in hand, so despite me also having some decent science production, I just felt like it will give moemoe too much value at the end, so I rejected the pact here. Moemoe will go for the cannons, goes for the selective breeding, for 1 upgrade, gets a little bit of food production started, plays the patriotism with the Silk Road bonus for an additional military action, builds the cannon, reveals the mobile artillery tactic, takes the rich land efficient upgrade, plays the reserves for resources, and then goes for his last iron upgrade. Now that we are at the beginning of age 3, we can also take a quick look at the overview. And we can see that moemoe at the moment has the culture lead, however ciufile is really producing culture big time and might overtake us soon. Economy wise, I do think at the moment every player has some nice stuff going. At the moment it looks maybe even the worst for me. The thing is, as soon as I finish the railroad, maybe go for another lab upgrade for 3 with the urban growth and the architecture. I think my pure production is looking the best, but I have only 6 civil actions. I have at least Darwin, but I was a bit worried that my position is not powerful enough here to, when I fall behind ciufile, to make up just with pure economical power, to maybe then score a lot with the impacts, or maybe just build some movies, multimedias or some stuff. So I was a bit worried in which direction this game might be heading. I was also very worried about a potential rebellion being the deck. The good news is that at least it's not really looking like the other players have seeded the rebellion, at least for the moment. And no, moemoe has the big science income. He has now upgraded all of his iron mines. He's a bit low in population. Ideally should try to rebuild maybe his second farm soon. At the next turn maybe he can go for organized religion, upgrade it with the efficient upgrade and build a second farm. And ciufile has delayed his second coal upgrade by a little bit, so his resource production is not the best, his food income is also not the best, so he has some weaknesses at least, but he has lots of civil actions and a big culture reduction, so I was a bit worried that his position is definitely quite strong, and maybe with as many civil actions he can also make it that a game ends relatively quickly, so that maybe a superior economy has 1 less turn to really pay off at the end. ciufile seeds. No rebellion, which I was happy to see. Barbarians are revealed. Sadly, moemoe just got stronger, so you won't lose the population to that. ciufile will take the reserves, which I think makes sense. Takes the tanks, and then the revolutionary deer goes for an upgrade and can now just upgrade his cavalryman, especially with being low in population. I think it makes sense having a way to get more strength going without needing new population. Now it is my turn. I again don't push, but I was very relieved to see that there's actually a Burrow Sports falling down into the 2 or without even 1 civil action area for me, so I can very cheaply now fix my happy faces. I'm also nicely prepared for PR potentially. I could now even build a Burrow Sports immediately, and maybe that could be the safer thing to do, as I don't have knowledge about rebellion, and one of those events was seeded by moemoe. And he, at the moment, didn't fix his happy faces, so he didn't prioritize it that much. Maybe also didn't want to give too big of a hint away, who knows. Maybe the other things were more important. So I was hoping that maybe the chance for rebellion is not that big. And I also just felt like I need to get this railroad finished now. I can't delay it even further in order to build a Bro Sports. So, yeah, I just felt like I need to take that risk. If the rebellion is revealed, it might just be game over. So maybe I shouldn't risk it, but I also just felt like if I don't get now this production going as quickly as possible, it's just also extremely difficult to not fall too much behind and find nice ways to come back. With finishing the railroad, I still think I definitely have some nice things going. And so I finished the railroad. I go for one more upgrade, also making space in my hand, going up to 9 science production, maybe allowing myself to go for an H3 government form at some point. And as you can see, then I actually also go for the oil. And the reason to go for this only partly because it's potentially strong for myself, maybe especially with Marie Curie coming down the road. So I think also if we just take a look at what it does for myself, it could be a very worthwhile card, but it's definitely not a must take because when I go for the next turn, it's already a little bit late. And of course I can maybe just cheaply upgrade this coal to oil, and with the railroad it will soon give me a lot of resources, but it's also 9 science investment. Probably it can still be worth it, but the reason why I really wanted to take it here, or why I think it's definitely worthwhile, is that it could also be extremely strong for moemoe. He could take it, develop it with the rich land efficient upgrade, go for 2 upgrades immediately, and it's still very early, so I think that would give him a big boost. Would delay his food production a little bit, his happy face solution building, but still I think it could be very strong, and I wanted to deny that option from him. After doing that, I have 2 civil actions left. Sadly, I don't have the hand space to take the reserves. Instead, I will need to commit to a technology already, and I felt like at the next turn I definitely want to finally fix my happy faces, so I developed professional sports. And then the question, do I maybe just want to float my last civil action, or do I actually want to take another card? At the end I ended up taking another card, the cavalryman, as I don't have any H2 tactic, and maybe being better prepared for H3 tactics could be quite important, but I have now again a full hand, so that could be problematic. But at the next turn maybe I want to go into oil, likely anyway. I can go for 1 upgrade from coal to oil and also build a professional sports. Or I could go for the frugality, maybe also the strategy, so I was hoping that I have some cards that I can get rid of in order to create new hand space. I keep the colonization cards in the civil unrest, discarded the impact of government. I draw the impact of culture, which is not really a seedable event, at least at the moment, but maybe nice to have knowledge that it isn't in the deck. moemoe gives it another try, offers me the scientific cooperation, and this time it was a lot closer if I should accept it or not, because moemoe has now only 9 science left that he has saved up, and also has already developed a bunch of those cheap technologies. It would still be a strong pact for him, but also I have 13 plus 9, I have lots of technologies, so my first thought was, I guess I'm going to accept this, especially because ciufile at this point it was looking like he might have the better position in the standings, so maybe especially getting some value against him and maybe increasing my chances to finish before him in this game could be important. There was one specific reason why at the end I thought, maybe it's better to actually reject it at the end, and that is that now with the pact not being accepted, moemoe is actually missing 1 single bit of science to go for both the organized religion and the navigation. Who knows if he would have gone for the navigation anyway, but if it only costs 4 science, no civil actions, just 4 science, he might just go for it. And the thing is, the vast territory 1 is coming. I felt like with me being already relatively deep into my yellow bank, it could be, especially if I win it for cheap, still quite a strong colony for me to win. I have just drawn an additional colonization card, so I felt like I have some chances to win it, and with that I wanted to prevent moemoe from going for the navigation for this turn. Maybe I should have just accepted a pact, but I also felt like if I want to go for an H3 government form, I might need to save up some science, which would then maybe allow moemoe to at the end get more activations out of the pact than I do. moemoe this turn will then go for the organized religion, goes for the efficient upgrade, will now build a second farm, does the line of play that I mentioned at the turn before. Takes modern infantry, reserves, and also a patriotism. So I do think that turn generally makes sense, but it also is already a little bit looking like he is doing some military preparation, taking all of the military resources and the modern infantry, so who knows, maybe he has some military plans, or it just felt like the most natural things to do with his civil actions. ciufile offers a peace treaty to me, again a pact that I had to consider. Of course it feels bad giving up on the option of going for a war against ciufile. The problem is I have no tactic at the moment, and it might just take a little bit too long to set up a successful war, even if I draw a good tactic now. I mean, I can copy to the mobile artillery tactic, but I don't know about military theory, about air forces. I am not that threatening at the moment to go for an aggression. Ciufile has the means to at least build up a respectable amount of strength. So I considered it just taking the additional culture, but it also just felt bad, maybe giving up on the option completely. Who knows if I have a free politics action to cancel it again in case I want to switch directions. So at the end I rejected it. But I also feel like in this position it's really not that likely that I will be able to pull something off. But depending on how greedy Ciufile plays it, maybe war or military push could be my best out, so I didn't want to close the door down, even though I felt like it is unlikely, and building up economy and preparing for some impacts I felt like is my better out, maybe combined with the strong H3 wonder. Ciufile placed, was it wave or military buildup, the wave of nationalism, goes for some upgrades, has now 21 strength in the strongest, takes the efficient upgrade, builds a third theater going up to 15 culture production, takes the reserves and the movies. Now it is my turn. I don't really want to push. This turn I will fix my happy faces, and now I think there's no need to risk any rebellion or something, especially because I have a nice way to use my politics action in an alternative way with going for the military alliance. So I offer it to moemoe, as I thought that, as said, moemoe maybe did a little bit of push into a military direction. Not a heavy one, but it looked like a turn that he could play if he has maybe already drawn a tactic or maybe a war. And I felt like that one way how maybe I have chances to win this game, or maybe to at least finish before Ciufile, could be if moemoe indeed pulls off a big military push, and Ciufile maybe doesn't find a way to defend himself. So I thought giving the additional strength to moemoe should be better than giving it to Ciufile, as I think a war from moemoe against Ciufile would be in my interest. This turn I will go for the oil. It's relatively late, but I can go for Marie Curie, which means I give up on the option of Pierre, but I just don't know when he will be available and whether I will be able to get him. So I wanted to go for Marie Curie, and it's still a nice increase of my production. I can take her. I can go for an upgrade. I thought about if I want to use Darwin to take Air Force for cheaper before going for Marie Curie. The turn would just work. I need to do this upgrade as my last civil actions, and I have 3 civil actions left to increase population. Take the Air Forces, elect Marie Curie, then go for the upgrade. It would just be possible. But I felt like I need to take small risks here, and I made a decision to rather go for Marie Curie, build a Bro Sports, and take the Revolutionary Idea. And I think the Revolutionary Idea, despite my good science production, is just extremely important. I need some military techs, and I also ideally want to get an H3 government form. I thought about taking the democracy, but without the Revolutionary Idea, I think it's a big investment, and at least there is another copy coming. Also maybe something like fundamentalism in case I still want to go for a military push. It's a bit risky, but at least moemoe has to pay 3 civil actions for the air forces, and if it is indeed maybe in my interest that he will go for a war against Ciufile, then it could even be good if he has the air forces. On the other hand, if I'm then the player who misses out on them, maybe I out of the sudden could be the most interesting target, but I was hoping that with my good production and with moemoe probably still needing some time in case he goes for a war to build up his strength, hopefully I will be in a position to defend myself well at the end, and so at the end I was willing to take the Rev Idea here instead of the Air Forces for 2 with Darwin. Sadly I miss out on the movies. It's the last copy. It could be a very nice technology to invest many oil resources into, but I think at the next turns maybe it would be a bit too greedy anyway, and at least there are still some copies of multimedia in the deck. I keep the civil unrest and the colonization cards. I draw 2 more colonization cards and impact of technology. I was very happy about the draw. I think in my current position I need some good impacts, and the impact of technology is definitely one of them. I have now 12 science production. I have the Revolutionary Idea. Ciufile has only 4 science production, has only the tanks developed so far, so I was very happy to see this impact of tech and also the colonization cards, as now I think I have good chances to win the vast territory 1. moemoe will develop the modern infantry, takes the air forces, takes the military build-up, goes for an upgrade, increases his population, builds a cannon, gets strongest for now, indicating that maybe there's a strength event coming. Otherwise maybe it could have been worthwhile to stay a bit weaker to more easily be able to use the military build-up. But maybe you can also achieve it with transitioning into a new tactic. For example, if he has the mobile positional army tactic. So yeah, with this turn it definitely looks even more like he is trying to build up something. He takes the rockets, maybe denying them from ciufile, making him being stuck on hussars, which is a fine tactic, but a mechanized army tactic could have been even stronger if he has one. ciufile then will increase his population, goes now for the team sports. Now we can maybe see that developing the organized religion instead of the team sports earlier on maybe was a mistake. He then plays the reserves for food, another reserves for food, increases population, builds the tanks, and then it takes the patriotism. Has spent now quite a bunch of those resources. Of course, it is bad maybe having to dispense something like a mine, but I felt like being able to use those reserves for resources could be quite important instead of using them now to get one more population out. Instead maybe destroying a mine, losing a bit of resource, but having a lot more resource available from the reserves, or maybe just disbanding this warrior now and missing out on one draw. I felt like could be alternatives that maybe could be important, because it could. Now moemoe, I think, has definitely shown clearly that he has some military intentions, at least, or is hoping towards building something off. And then I feel like using those reserves for resources might be very important to just build as many tanks as possible, or to threaten as many tanks as possible. In an ideal scenario, ciufile can maybe then doesn't even need to build them if he's just threatening enough. I this turn see the impact of technology, and a vast territory is revealed. I win it for just a warrior. I thought about sending a knight away and only one colonization card, but I will lose the H2 colonization cards soon anyway, and can't that easily keep that many cards in hand, so I just sent both of those cards and only a warrior away. And this turn was quite a tricky one, because I saw that moemoe is starting to build up some military, and there are some different lines how I can play it relatively safe. For example, I can now go for the fundamentalism, build 2 cannons, maybe then at the next turn copy the tactic to not miss out on any draws. I have at least one more civil action, I have additional strength in military actions, so that could be safe. I could also just go for strategy in cannons, but I felt like, maybe if I play too conservative here, it might not be enough to win the game at the end. Maybe if I'm just playing it safe, then it could happen that moemoe potentially pulls off a war against ciufile, and maybe I then finish before ciufile, but if I play too conservatively, maybe I don't finish before moemoe then. So it was a tough call for me, but I went with a bit more of a greedy line here. And I actually went with the democracy here, and that line is greedy in 2 ways. First of all, it's not clear whether I can actually defend myself against a war or not at the next turn, and also a double aggression could potentially hit me. So there are some dangers with this play, but I increase my culture production immediately. I have now out of the sudden 8 civil actions to work with, and I was hoping that I can hopefully it is a situation where moemoe finds it too risky to go for a war against, but we can maybe take a look at this at the end of my turn. I will go for the democracy. I will increase my population 2 times without a frugality, getting out of corruption, and one of the reasons why the democracy play is, I think, quite strong is that it allows me to also grab the empire state building. I could have also gone for fundamentalism, build 2 cannons, take the empire state building, but then after having won the vast territory, I would have corruption, and maybe it's fine to have corruption, but on the other hand, I also might need a lot of resource to build the empire state building. It just felt a little bit weird. I would have less civil actions, I would produce less science, so it's more science costly, and I don't get the additional cultural production. But the question is, of course, how much am I in danger here? And the good news is that I have 17 science at the next turn, and that is very important, very relevant, because that is just enough to go for cannons and military theory. And the ability to go for military theory instead of the strategy that I already have in hand is quite important here, because I then can at the next turn go for the military theory, build 3 cannons, 1 knight, and copy the tactic for 6 military actions, while with the strategy I would be missing 1 civil action due to that and could threaten 1 tactic less. Now that I talk about it, I just have the idea that maybe building a knight could actually be an interesting idea. So that would probably be a bit safer, but I'm also in a position where I think I really have to hope towards getting some more good impacts. So missing out on a draw is actually quite a bit big burden, but I that's something that I think I should have considered more. Just now building a knight so that even with the strategy I can go for 3 mobile artillery tactics even if I don't get a military theory. The thing is, there are 2 copies of military theory left. Ciufile might take one of them, but hopefully if only one or none is revealed on moemoe's turn, it's just he doesn't know whether I get the military theory or not, and if I get the military theory, build 3 cannons in a knight, and I have a very respectable amount of strength at the next turn. He can't go for both air forces and military theory. I felt like he needs still maybe 1 turn to build up his strength, and so I was hoping that he won't go for a war against me. Maybe I should have been playing it a little bit safe with building the knight. I do think going for the bit more greedy line is maybe the correct decision here, but maybe I should have built a knight. But I also think getting the 3 draws is very important. At least the military theory is in the deck to potentially threaten some things. And of course there's the danger that maybe moemoe tries an aggression and then there could be a double aggression. But with moemoe maybe wanting to build more military, I was hoping that he won't go for an aggression, but it is another risk. So it's a risky line, but I felt like especially if I want to win this game, and after the start that I had in the tournament, I felt like I needed a win really, and so I went for a greedy line, which I was hoping that if I don't get punished, I have better chances to win, with having a wonder, with having the democracy, with not having corruption, and still getting 3 draws. And I was happy to see that I have another impact here. The impact of industry gives me a significant amount of culture against both of my opponents, +5 and +6, but there's the chance at least that maybe some mines also will get destroyed by my opponents. And now I was very afraid that maybe moemoe would try a war against me, despite there being the danger of me going for military theory. There's even the first copy of military theory in the row, which he could take away. But I was very relieved to see that he doesn't do it, and he is even not using his politics action at all. He will disband a knight using the military buildup actually for 11 resources, builds the modern infantry, increases his population, develops the air forces, builds an air force, reveals the entrenchments tactic, takes the reserves, the multimedia, and the urban growth. And we can see that at the next turn he can declare war, he can play the patriotism with the Silk Road bonus, then he will have 3 additional military actions, which is just enough to build 2 cannons and an air force, putting him at quite a respectable amount of strength. And he also has the Meiji Castle, so he can sacrifice an air force, get some culture bonus from the Meiji Castle, and make the war even bigger. Ciufile cedes, the inhabited territory is revealed. I was actually not willing at all to bid for that. Maybe I could have bid something like 1 warrior as I want to go into mobile artillery anyway, but I also felt like I have more than enough population anyway. I can destroy my bronze mines if I need to, and maybe just every bit of strength could be important, so just having this warrior sitting around for 1 additional strength could maybe actually be relevant. At the end, Ciufile wins it, and I do think for him the additional population is more important than for me. As you can see, I have a bunch of free population and can even get 2 more with the frugality. For him it's more important, but he also at least loses the warrior. Ciufile will take the Marlene Dietrich, takes the military theory, plays both revolutionary ideas, develops the military theory, goes for Marlene, builds a tank, is now at 47 strength. There was no resource yellow card in a row for him, meaning that at the next turn he has actually only 12 resources with the patriotism, and he already uses Marlene's bonus, so the best he can do is maybe to go for a tank and a cavalryman, and maybe he gets a copy of Bro Sports where he can use the efficient upgrade for another upgrade, but a lot more, unless he gets help from the development, he should not be able to do. So he is definitely in a vulnerable position, and if I make sure to be less vulnerable, maybe there's some hope that moemoe will go for war against Ciufile, and that maybe with me being able to finish Empire State Building and also some good impacts, I could have a chance to win this game actually. I was now really hoping that at least 1 out of military theory and air forces will be revealed for my next turn, so that I have 1 of those things available to build up my defense. Maybe the air force is even more important, not now that I don't have to respond immediately and can maybe just go for the strategy, take air forces, and hopefully then threaten a good amount of strength. Also, Ciufile will actually take the endowment, so more cards will be revealed. First of all, I will push here. I of course want to get this impact of industry in. There was still a consideration to actually push the civil unrest here, because I will only draw 1 card this turn with what I have planned. I need to spend a lot of military actions already this turn to be good enough prepared to defend myself. And then with only drawing one card, maybe it could be worthwhile to just seed the civil unrest now, getting 2 additional culture, and then still getting the impact of industry at the next turn, which will be my last one. But I at the end decided against it. First of all, there are quite a bunch of impacts for which I'm nicely prepared for. Meaning that even with one draw, while it would be a bit lucky, it's also not completely unrealistic that I actually draw another good impact, and then it would be very bad if I see now the civil unrest, and out of the sudden I have 2 good impacts, but I can only push one of them. So just for 2 more culture, I was willing to give up on that hope of actually drawing a good impact, and also additionally, I felt like that if moemoe indeed pulls now off a big war against ciufile, he is actually the bigger threat for me, and then a better thing than seeding the civil unrest now could then actually be, if I don't draw another impact, to cancel the military alliance to make it that moemoe gets 3 less culture at the next turn. So I seeded the impact of industry here, and the event that is revealed will actually be quite impactful. For me, it's actually a little bit nice even. I lose the Stonehenge, but I don't need the happy face this turn anyway, so it's just a +1 culture for me. But for moemoe, that Ravages of Time actually is a little bit of a disaster, because he has to lose either Silk Road or Imechi Castle. Of course, we could argue losing the Silk Road is maybe not that bad, it's of course a bit annoying, but you shouldn't forget that in order to actually pull off his war, he needs every military action, and he planned his turn in a way where he needs to play the patriotism for 2 military actions, meaning that now with the Silk Road being destroyed, if he destroys the Silk Road, he can only go for building 2 cannon, but not another air force, which makes a very big difference, meaning that if he wants to get the most out of a potential war, maybe he should even destroy the Imechi Castle, which feels a bit weird, destroying the Imechi Castle, which is a very strong late-game wonder in regards of the military, but in this situation, the Silk Road maybe even being more relevant, so the Ravages of Time, quite an impactful event, also a bit unfortunate. Of course, you could argue he shouldn't have played in a way that he's relying on this, but both ciufile and I pushed, so at the end of his turn there was still an H1 event on top, and then the first one of those cards, and he didn't have knowledge about those cards, is actually the Ravages of Time, so definitely an unfortunate reveal for him that will limit his strength potential now quite a bit. And yeah, I was not completely sure if that is a good or a bad thing for me. I think it's a good thing if moemoe decides to still go for war, and maybe that is his best course of actions, but I thought that maybe with the spaceflight and also the engineering genius being available, maybe just going for 20 plus culture spaceflight, for which he doesn't need to destroy a lot of stuff, could actually be a very viable choice now for him instead of just going for a war, which now isn't as big, will give him actually less culture in the spaceflight and requires a lot of destruction. But of course, the war has the aspect also of hitting then maybe ciufile or me, but I will make sure to be very nicely defended now, so I was not really that much worried that moemoe would go for a war against me. So, and if moemoe actually decides to go for the spaceflight, I was a bit worried because ciufile has still a culture lead. I mean, I will get a wonder. I have 2 decent impacts already in the deck, but it's unlikely that I will draw another one. So without a war, I was a bit worried about my chances. If he still goes for war and it is just less big for him, then I felt like I might actually have decent chances to win now, as then that ciufile will get hit by a war, moemoe will win a war, but not by as much as it would have been before. Because if he loses indeed the Imechi Castle, it's 2 strength from the Imechi Castle, 5 from sacrificing, and then the 3 culture that he would take from sacrificing, so it makes a really big difference. I this turn will definitely take the air forces, I will definitely go for cannons and strategy, I will build 2 cannons, and I will copy the tactic. I almost made a mistake not thinking about how many military actions I actually needed the next turn to defend myself, but I really need to copy this turn even though it hurts not drawing more cards. I have enough resources to build 2 air forces and another army. Sadly, I am missing 2 resources to then even build a 3rd air force, but I can go for plus 30. And then I considered 2 different lines. Either I thought about increasing my population 2 times, using the frugality now, making sure to get as many population as I can, and then maybe taking something like urban growth and efficient upgrade. With the urban growth, I then also, to threaten more strength, I could go for pro sports, or generally, the urban growth could give me more resources to work with. So I could go for bro spots. After building the bro spots with the urban growth, I have 4 resources left after having built 1 more army into air forces. And with 4 resources, I can't actually do that much to threaten even more strength. I can't build a cannon, I can't build a bro spots. So the best I could do is just build another knight. Meaning to threaten more strength, the better line is actually to go for revolutionary idea and satellites. And that line might be better generally, because one of the impacts I have seeded is the impact of tech. And without a revolutionary idea, I can't go for 2 more technologies, and with that I at the end came to the conclusion that I will go for satellites and revolutionary idea. I can go for 2 technologies at the next turn. The satellites could matter for some impacts. I threatened, I think, as much strength as I potentially can. It should be enough to not be the target of a war, as my strength potential is, I think, 76, or if I remembered correctly, ciufile, if he goes for another tank and cavalryman, will only be able to go for plus 12, 59, maybe 2 more with if he goes for professional sports, so 61. So hopefully moemoe, if he goes for war, should choose ciufile as the target. So at the end I was hoping that moemoe will still go for war. I think it could be a very reasonable choice for him to go for spaceflight. I didn't do any concrete calculations, as I have to defend against the war anyway, or prepare against the war anyway, and and the satellites play might also be the better one for a peaceful option because of the additional tech. But I was hoping that moemoe will still go for war despite the Ravages of Time, and then I think the Ravages of Time would be a very good event for me. I will get 1 draw. I was hoping to get a bit lucky here, maybe drawing another impact. Sadly I don't draw one, meaning that I have to hope that the 2 arguably are good impacts, nice that I did draw them, will hopefully be enough for me. Now I was very excited to see what moemoe will do during his politics phase, and he will indeed go for war against ciufile, which I was very happy to see. Also with ending the age, he has actually some uprising issues here. And as you can see, he first of all placed the patriotism with the Silk Road bonus, meaning he actually destroyed the Imechi Castle. So Imechi Castle, being the less good military wonder compared to Silk Road, is now confirmed. I hope you all understand now why I put the Silk Road in S tier on my tier list. It even is better in the military aspects than the Imechi Castle, as you can see. Now, but moemoe uses the patriotism with the Silk Road bonus, has then 3 military actions in order to build 2 more cannons and an air force. But as you can see, he has to destroy a lot of stuff, which is why I really am not sure. I'm really not sure if it is actually worth it, because ciufile will be able to go up to 61 strength, I think, and then it's only 15 culture that moemoe steals. It's a 30 culture swing against ciufile, so against ciufile it's probably better, and if moemoe is afraid that with my 2 impacts and my position in there, that the Empire State Building, that he has not the greatest chances against me anyway, maybe he needs to go against ciufile, but I do think maybe going for a less destructive turn, going for the space flight could be an alternative. But especially if he sees ciufile as the main contender, I think going for the war could definitely still be the correct choice here. Ciufile this turn will cede. The international negotiations are revealed. With his choice of what I have to pay to moemoe, we can actually see that he is now mainly concerned about finishing before moemoe, maybe evaluating my position stronger, because I have to pay food to moemoe, and losing the food doesn't hurt me at all. I couldn't have increased my population 2 times anyway, so that doesn't hurt me at all, while the food doesn't help moemoe at all. So I think we can see here that he maybe thinks that he needs to try now to finish before moemoe. He will go for the professional sports, plays the patriotism, goes for an upgrade, destroys a mine, builds the tanks and the cavalryman, going up to 61 strength, plays the endowment for 0 culture. Now it is my turn. I can't really use my politics phase. I will finish the Empire State Building. moemoe destroyed his farm, so before that I was very likely winning the resource and the science category. Now I, even without needing to build an additional farm, already won the food category, while I can't overtake ciufile's culture production and also their strength, so I can just finish the Empire State Building. It's the most that I can get out of it. I also definitely wanted to go for the satellites and 1 more tech. Which one depends on how the rest of the turn is looking like. I definitely wanted to go for 1 arena, just getting the full amount of happy phases for an impact of happiness. And then I could potentially build a religion and a mine, which would give me 2 safe culture, because Impact of Industry is in the deck. Also, it would be nice for Impact of Variety, so definitely a very fine play. But I looked at what impacts could be in there, and the only bad ones really would be Impact of Strength and Impact of Competition. About Impact of Strength I can't really do anything, but about Impact of Competition I can. And likely both of those impacts need to be in there in order for me to not finish at the first position. And with that I just went for another arena, as I need to play around those impacts anyway, because if those 2 are in the deck, it still could be relevant, it could still be close, it depends on whether moemoe goes for an aggression against me. For example, before ciufile, I would still finish before ciufile, even if the 2 worst impacts are in the deck, as long as moemoe doesn't go for an aggression against me. And if he goes for something like Occupy, or maybe a raid where he destroys one of my arenas again, then it could actually even result in a tie against ciufile, if I remember my calculations correctly. So I really played around that potential impact that would be dangerous for me, to be as nicely prepared for that. Also, in case moemoe goes for a raid, even if I lose a bro spot now, I still have the full amount of happy faces, meaning that the potential impact of happiness will definitely not result in being an issue. And with going for those bro spots, instead of building 2 more things, I have at the end enough civil actions to actually go for the military theory, instead of going for the air forces that I already have in hand. I'm at 52 strength. I can't defend against an aggression, but there wasn't really a nice way to achieve that if I also want to finish the Empire State building. So now I just needed to hope that there's maybe no aggression directed against me. First of all, moemoe will steal some culture. I'm at 87, moemoe is now at 76, will get his last turn. ciufile is 83, so all players are coming very close together now. There's an aggression. When I opened my turn and saw that I have to defend against an aggression, I was very worried, but the blunder is maybe the least bad one for me, as it doesn't hurt me in any way. It just helps moemoe, so it might still be nice for him, but something like an armed intervention I would be a lot more afraid of. moemoe this turn can go for Steve Jobs for 1 activation, and then builds a multimedia, increases his population 2 times, builds a religion, so just thanks to the blunder can build a little bit more stuff. And then before the final impacts, he is in the lead, but only 2 points before me. ciufile is 4 points behind me. I have 2 good impacts in there. Impact of Technology is +8 against both of my opponents. Impact of Industry is +6 against ciufile and even +8 against moemoe. So I have a lead with the impacts that I have knowledge about. But if there is strength in competition, it could still be a bit dangerous, especially against moemoe, who gets an even bigger swing with the Impact of Strength if it would be in there. So let's see how that will end. The first impact, I was very happy to see. It's not one of mine, but it's actually a very good one for me. The Impact of Architecture, building those professional spots at least, also has already paid off just for this impact alone. So I have now an even bigger lead, and now I was a lot more confident that I will be able to win this game. Also, it was a bit better one for ciufile compared to moemoe. We have the Impact of Wonders, which again is a bit better for ciufile compared to moemoe. It's also decent for me. And then there are 2 impacts left, and those are mine. We have the Impact of Industry, +12 for me, +4 for moemoe, +6 for ciufile. ciufile is now 1 point in the lead before moemoe, and the last impact is the Impact of Technology, +20 for me, +12 for ciufile, +12 for moemoe, meaning that I'm at the end able to win this game. ciufile finishes at a 2nd position, just being 1 single point before moemoe, who at the end loses the game. So that was quite an exciting game, a game where going into H3 with ciufile running away with the culture, with me not having a clear way to maybe punish him with the military, I was very much worried that I might not be able to win the game. However, I do think it was quite good for me that moemoe found a way to go for a military push. I do think that helped me in finishing before ciufile. And then it was also quite unfortunate for moemoe that the Ravages of Time were revealed before his turn, really disturbing his war plans. The Magic Castle would have made his war a lot bigger. Maybe I still would have won, but it definitely would have been a lot closer, and at least maybe would have finished at the 2nd position. So that was definitely quite unfortunate. That he had to lose the Magic Castle because he was relying on the additional military action from the Silk Road. And yeah, so quite an interesting game. I'm very happy that I won this one. I was very worried going into H3, thinking, oh my, after the 2 4-player games, I might not be able to win this one, and then it's looking really dire. But I, maybe with a bit of luck, managed to get a win out of this difficult situation. Or it wasn't very difficult. I had a solid position, I had a strong economy, but still it was a challenging position. But luckily, at the end, I am able to win this one. And with that, we can now take a look at the current standings. We also have one more game finished where I wasn't involved. The first two-player game has finished. moemoe and ciufile are by far the fastest player in the group, so their two-player game has already finished, and we can now take a look at the result. And as you can see in the two-player game, ciufile managed to win against moemoe. It looked like it was quite a close game, so yeah, ciufile able to win this one. With that, it's not looking that great for moemoe, as we can see in the standings. He has 5 games finished, only 8 points. I'm still behind him, but I have 2 less games finished, so I think it's looking better for me now after I was able to win this 3-player game. I'm still in a difficult spot, but it was very important to get that first win in with the first 3-player game. At least I'm at 6 points. I am still 5 points behind Eske, but if I get some more results going, maybe finish before Eske in some of the games, I have it in my own hands to overtake him again. ciufile is in the lead at the moment, but also has already 5 games finished, so I would say at the moment definitely Eske has the best position, but it's still a lot possible. moemoe, what is the most that he can now get? He has 1, 3, and 2 two-player games left, so he can score 13 points, 21. That might not be enough. Maybe it's theoretically possible, so we will see. But all of the other players still definitely have chances to win this group and stay in the tournament at the end. So quite an exciting group. I hope it was an interesting game for you to watch. The next 3-player games should finish relatively soon. I have to see if I will be able to record a video in the next few days, but I hope it won't take too long. And yeah, and then I say thanks for watching, have a good time, and see you in the next video.